Today, I want to welcome Gary Leeman. He is with EOS Worldwide. Some of you know what that means, some of you do not. But basically, Gary helps companies scale beyond ceilings that keep them stuck. A lot of businesses reach a point where they grow, and then all of a sudden things break. And they don't understand why, because they're doing more of everything that made them successful. But there are a few things that are missing. Gary helps folks identify those missing pieces and put the systems in place so they can continue to scale and be one of the rare companies that scales beyond 10 million or even more in revenue. Gary, welcome.
Wow, Craig, thank you. Just right off the top of your head, you nailed EOS. That's impressive. Thank
Yeah,
you for
well,
that.
so normally I was telling you when we were in the green room, I was telling you that my tech was failing me. And so I have an agent that's supposed to help draft the intros.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I was telling you also, people have been talking about these all the time as agents. It's like, you put these in, you have like a little junior Einstein working for you.
Hmm.
I put it in, I was like, geez, I got Jeff Spicoli. And and Spicoli showed up this morning. He was like, dude. I was like, don't dude me, give me what I want. Well, I don't know. Where did I find it? I'm like, every place you found it before. Oh yeah.
You
And
just
so
you
I
just got to be Mr. Hand. You just got to give him a little special attention. Jeff Spicoli got it once he stopped smoking, right?
yeah, exactly. But it's so anyway, I was like, all right. Well, Craig, you're just gonna have to wing it. And
Did a
fortunately, I
great
know
job.
enough about what you do that hopefully I wung it well.
You wung it well. You wung it well. So thank you for that intro. Yeah, hey, it's great to be here. I'm excited for this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but the other thing we were talking about, and I wanted to explore this more, and this is you went over and you lived in Ireland for a year. First
Oh
off, what
yeah.
took you to Ireland?
Oh, so just really fortunate. When I graduated with my engineering degree, I ended up getting a job with a medical products company, and they were global, and they had a dialyzer factory, an artificial kidney factory in Dublin, just outside of Dublin. And I was sent over to do a project, and one thing led to another. And next thing you know, I'm over there as an expat, helping them out with a particular issue they had. So I'm kind of like, a corporate guy on a sweet deal living in Ireland. And I grew up in New Jersey, right outside of New York City. And when you grow up in an environment, it's your normal. I go over to Ireland, and I just have this year of living wonderfully, right? Just making friends, working, and then, in the pub, going to Gaelic football matches, and just really living life. And unfortunately, all good things come to an end. And the visa expires, the work expires, and it's time to come home and, get back to
So,
corporate gig. And I
so
get back to
real
Jersey.
quick,
Oh,
yeah, real
sorry.
quick, while you're over in Ireland.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're talking about adjusting to that. I'm sitting there picturing you saying, "Hey, would you mind saying that again, a little bit slower and in English this time?"
So being in Ireland, they are witty.
Yeah.
It took me 6 months sitting. By the way, is one of the coolest things is they break for tea. You're in the factory, sitting there in the office with the other engineers, and there's accountants, and there's the whole factory running, and a whistle goes at like 10:15 in the morning, and everybody stops what they're doing, and you line up in the cafeteria, and you get your cup of tea, pack of crisps, a Cadbury chocolate bar, and everyone in the whole factory is sitting there for tea time for break, and I'm sitting there just trying to get a word in. 6 months. Just the banter is zipping all over the place. I can't catch up. By the time I think of something to say, there are already three comments. It's an amazing, culture. Their gift of the gab, as so to speak. You really pick it up.
Yeah.
Best time during that period, sitting there, one of the other guys from corporate. I won't name names. Big loud cackle, and the guys at my table cringe, and this guy Arthur goes, "Oh, the effing yank," and everyone kind of turned and looked at me
Yeah.
because I was also a yank, and Arthur's like, "No, you're a good one," and it was like, "All right, I'm okay. I've been accepted here, right? I'm not viewed as that arrogant Yank. So no, it was a great time. And I was young, just out of school, and I just didn't recognize how much I had accustomed to a different way of life.
Yeah.
So I come back to New Jersey, and I remember I was like, gosh, I'm home a couple days, and Dad and I are in the car. We had to go to Home Depot to get something for my sister's new house. And like there's honking in a parking lot at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. And I'm just like, everyone here is insane, right? You're all nuts. I can't live like this anymore. You just don't understand how intense the New York City area can be, especially if you're just used to it. So I just had this real kind of knee jerk, oh, I can't live like this moment. And so I just decided, all right, I'm going to go someplace other than New Jersey for a while. Ended up landing in Seattle. And then next thing you know, 6 months later, I fall in love with Seattle and 20 years go by. And boom, like in a blink of an eye. And that was like 94 through 2015. And then I moved to Texas about
Wow.
11 years ago. And I've been in the Dallas area since. But
That's cool.
yeah, reverse culture shock is an interesting thing to experience. People talk about going to a different country and kind of having the culture shock because it's so different there. Ireland never did that to me because everything was just, it made sense to me and it was calmer and slower. So you come off the boil, so to speak, and then they throw you back into boiling water and you
Yeah.
really notice it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting. As you were talking about that, one of the things that hit me was, the greater New York area was the
Yeah.
recipient of a lot of Irish immigrants.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But yeah, New York is just like a frenetic pace of
Absolutely.
getting things done. That's interesting. One of the times I came back, actually, this was the first time I came back from Japan. My brother picked me up at the airport and he said, "Hey, you haven't been driving for a year. Why don't you take the keys and drive?" And this is like
Oof.
in DC Baltimore area, with notoriously thick
And they're
traffic.
on the other side, right?
Well, and that's what I'm thinking. I was like, Brian, I don't think this is a good idea. I'm jet lagged. I'm tired. I'm used to driving on the other side of the
Hmm.
road.
Hmm.
And he's like, no, 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 I insist. And so we get out on the roads around DC and Baltimore, and I'm doing like 45 miles per hour. And it's not because I was trying to go slow, but the speed limits
Yeah.
are slower in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just driving what felt normal, and I'd look down and realize I was doing 45, and I'm on one of these roads around DC where that was not welcome behavior.
No.
And 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 so I'd speed up, and then within 10 minutes, I'm back doing 45. And the thing that finally convinced him was we were going in to some business park. I forget why, but we were pulling into some business park and it had like 2 lanes in, 2 lanes out. And so I start pulling in to the lanes. He's like, no, 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 the right lane.
Oh,
Well, I'm
yeah,
pulling
yeah.
in the far left lane. So I
Yeah,
pull
yeah, yeah.
one lane over to the second left lane. And he finally grabs the steering wheel to pull me all the way over into, and he realizes that was when he was like, "Hey, I'll be happy to drive if you want." I was like, "I think that's a capital idea."
It's that left turn. Ireland is on the other side, right? It's
Yeah,
like England, and it's the left turn that really gets you.
yeah,
Adjusting a left turn really gets you when you're switching back and forth. Man, it just it's when you were sharing that story, it just speaks to kind of ultimately how adaptable the human is. We adapt, right? Whatever that situation we're in, it just eventually becomes our normal. We just get used to it. We acclimate. It's the sudden change that can be unsettling. But like, you'd probably think to yourself when you move to Japan, like, I'm not going to start driving slow. Like,
yeah.
that's built in. But no, right? It's like
Well,
going hot weather, cold weather. Your blood thickens or it thins, right? We adapt.
yeah. Well, and in Japan, it's not like you have an option to drive fast unless you want to mow down the car in front of you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I mean, because the roads are packed over there.
Right.
Staying on the staying on the proper side of the road in Japan was easy because it was instant death if you got on the wrong side.
Yeah, so you never find those the people who made those mistakes are no longer existing, right?
Right. Yeah. But it's interesting, and I shared with you in the green room other ways that you know coming back to the U.S. I lived in Japan 3 different times, and coming back to the U.S. even after being gone for a year, so much changed, and in many ways I
Mm.
was like, oh my goodness, my country's not who I remember it being, and the thing that struck me was, well, if there can be that much culture shock just being out of your country for 1 year, what happens to a business culture over a year? I mean, when you're in it, you don't notice the change. When you leave it and then you come back and you see the change. And
Yeah, that's
I,
interesting.
I know this is out of left field. I know you didn't prepare for this question, but I'm wondering, I have to believe that company cultures are changing on similar trajectories, but we just don't notice them when we're in them, but they have noticeable impacts.
So that's a very interesting observation. I think that companies with an intentional culture, the culture probably doesn't shift if it's intentional. Oftentimes, so I work for Starbucks corporate, amazing company in so many ways.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people that would leave. They would take an opportunity with T-Mobile or Microsoft or what have you. They would come back. A lot of them would come back, right? Grass is always greener. And there was something really compelling about the Starbucks culture. Wasn't perfect,
Yeah.
but it's surprising how many people, when they returned, would say, like, man, nothing really changes, does it? I'm like, oh, no, no. All, all of our problems are still our problems. We haven't
Yeah.
fixed any of those, right? But the culture was very intentional, right? So even the bad stuff sticks around. I think innovative companies are companies that are figuring it out. Like you can come back in and you wouldn't even recognize the place, right?
Yeah.
Good or bad, you wouldn't recognize the place. But I think intentional cultures, if you get it right, you probably wouldn't. You probably could return 5 years later and just hit the ground running and go, right?
Yeah. I wonder if the edict at Meta or Facebook
Hmm.
is still to move fast and break things.
Oh,
I wonder if growth broke that in their culture because that was part of their early culture.
yeah. Yeah. At some, I mean, at some point, like innovation, and this was something at Starbucks too. I mean, Howard was very, very, innovation focused. I mean, it was an innovative company, even though it was like it was a coffee company. No, he was constantly changing things and innovating. At some point, you reach scale and it becomes very difficult. Howard's idea, like, I want to see a soda dispenser on every counter. He used to be able to pull that off when there was 1,000 stores. But when there's 45,000 globally, it's a totally different thing to be like, yeah, we'll make that happen next week, right? It's just like next to impossible to move at the speed, when you get bigger. So I don't know, I don't know Meta well enough, but I'm sure at some point that's when you kind of have to break off and have like Skunk Works or, divisions for innovation because just the scale of an operation going at speed, making significant changes and expecting them to just click and move over, I don't know, that's near impossible.
Yeah. Well, and another company that's going to be interesting to watch is Apple.
Mm.
With Tim Cook
Oh
stepping
yeah,
down and
Tim.
John Ternus, Apple's definitely not the company that Steve Jobs left. They, they went from like a 10-year streak of innovation after innovation after innovation to, um, they're a lot more profitable, but also a lot less innovative.
Isn't it interesting? Like the stock didn't seem to suffer. Everyone, was doom and gloom when Tim came in, but I think you're right. I don't, there hasn't been that next groundbreaking thing.
Yeah.
right? iPod, iPhone, iPad, and now, what's the last brand new product they came out with, right?
The Vision Pro,
Like
which I think they conveniently have amnesia over.
we like to forget about that. Well, it's
Yeah,
tough. I mean, it's tough. It's lightning in a bottle. How many times in a row Steve pulled that off? It's crazy,
yeah.
right? Literally world-changing technologies, right?
Well, it'd be real interesting to see. I've heard mixed critique of the John Turnus, the upcoming CEO. The positive is he's a product guy, and maybe that will turn Apple back into a product company where they're innovating new products. The downside is that John hadn't led any innovative product development. That he's basically taken what's out there and just made copies of it. The next generation iPad, the next generation
Right.
iPhone. But well, so let's go back to this whole thing about culture because you know when somebody starts a company, maybe it's themselves and one or two of their buddies, maybe it's themselves. They have some idea, they grow it to a point, and then they start hiring people.
Hmm.
Some good hires, some bad hires. Um, But I hear story after story of folks just hitting these ceilings. They start growing and they had just this amazing growth, and then things go wonky.
Yep.
Revenue goes up, profits go down, revenues stay flat, hiring goes up,
Mm-hmm.
the profits go way down. What are some of the kind of like the critical breakpoints that you see companies hitting as they're going along this path?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. I teach this concept of right people, right seats. So, like, there's 10,000 books written about people, performance, management, leadership. If you really boil it down, do you have the right people? Do they fit your culture? To know that and to be able to answer that question, you got to know what your culture is, right? And then are they in the right seats, right? So did you define the role you need them to fill? And do they have the ability to consistently perform in that role? Really, if you break it down, do these people fit the culture we're trying to establish or have established? And can they do the job? Have we defined the job and can they do it? Simple. So here's what I see often. Cultures happen accidentally. So you hire someone you think is like you that'll fit in, and sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong because you haven't really defined it. And when I walk like leadership teams through a discovery process, not a development, you don't create core values that sound good that you'd like to have. You literally go inside, look inside. We call it's like what you reek of as a company, your actual values, what makes a great employee for your unique organization. When you bring somebody through a discovery process, it's amazing how many times at the end when we align, here's our actual values. It's amazing how many times like the light bulb goes off and someone's like, they finally put the finger on this particular person problem, right? This person that has rubbed them the wrong way. It just doesn't seem to be working out. It's a light bulb moment. Like, I get it now. They don't take ownership. The way we define ownership is when you make a mistake, you're the first person to admit it, and you're open to the feedback and you fix it and you learn, you move on. And this person just won't admit they're ever wrong. They're great. We love them all other ways, but that's the problem, right? As an example, and it just is super clarifying. So I see a lot of times if you don't go in really understanding your culture and hire against it, somebody on paper could look great. A miss like that can be super critical and it can kind of like really bug you for a long time when you can't put your finger on it. So what are you doing? You're kind of slowly bleeding. There's this person that's not quite right, and you can't really define why. And so you suffer. And boy, you build a few of those into the organization and everybody starts to degrade. So that's one big area. The other
And
one,
yeah,
yeah,
and before you go there, for me, that's an integrity issue. I've actually written into our company manual
Yeah.
that we will own our failures as much as we own our successes.
Perfect. So, for example, that would be how you would define how that shows up for the people you want in your company, right?
Yeah.
Through explaining integrity. And be careful, like integrity is one of those generic sounding core values. So I love the fact that you actually then can explain it. Here's what I mean by integrity. That's super important. When you say like, hardworking and professional and integrity, it's yeah, you and everybody else says the same thing. So I love how you defined it because it means something then. And by the way, when you share that, people that don't have that value, they kind of self-select out, especially if you truly own it. Like this is who we are. So by the way, if this you're not going to enjoy hanging out here and working here because everybody here, this is how they show up. So if you're real clear with that when you're hiring, people take that as a strong signal, like maybe this isn't a place for me. Maybe I'm not going to enjoy being here. So values, but doing it the right way, that's a big thing I see a lot that's holding people back. The other one is this concept of right seat. Often, as you're growing, especially when you're smaller and growing, you tend to design jobs around people.
Hmm.
As you
Yep.
grow, you tend to be like, hey, I hired this person to be my bookkeeper. I also need to do some budgeting, so I'm going to ask her to do some budgeting because it seems to fit. That's related to, the books, accounting, right? And that person may have no experience or background in budgeting, right? You have somebody who does some scheduling for you. Now all of a sudden you're like, you know what we need to do? We have to call our old customers. So we kind of need an inside sales rep to make calls. And you're taking this person, you're like, well, in between scheduling, they should just start calling. It makes sense. You got a body, you have another need. Well, if you were to design that seat and really ask who would be great at making, customer retention follow-up sales calls versus who would be great at scheduling work, vastly different people, right? One's very detail oriented, one's very, just leave me alone, let me follow the process. And a salesperson just eager to talk and churn numbers and get their bonuses. But we lose that. We're like, I got this new need. I'm paying this person. Let's add this duty. All of a sudden, you have a whole organization, really, of people with these kind of grab bag job titles doing whatever it, you know, everybody in a small and growing company wants to pitch in, willing to multitask, willing to do, wear many hats, take on duties, right? It's great. That flexibility, that eagerness, that turns bad real quick if you're not careful. So you have to
You
be
know,
intentional about what you need a role to perform and hire against that.
it ties into something, a discussion we were having in the green room. I was
Oh, by the
telling,
way, the shrimp and the green one, fantastic.
oh,
Thank you.
that's awesome. But the people I tend to hire are
Yeah.
self-directed people. Somebody working for me right now, her name's Elena. Her unique, she was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, and at age 13, she moved to California. She's going to a new school, making new friends, speaking a new language in a new country. Everything in her life went topsy-turvy at age 13,
Hmm.
and she figured out her way through it. And she's amazing. And so she's somebody I can throw unstructured tasks at. She takes initiative. She's, does all these things. These are the people that I hire. And I told you that I've recently spun up my autonomous agent, and I've hit, I think, some of the barriers that you help people fix. I realized
Hmm.
I referred to my agent as Spicoli. He's like, dude. And I realized I'm trying to talk to Spicoli the way I would talk to Elena. Hey, Elena, there's a problem over here. Can you figure out what it is and fix it?
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
And
yeah.
Spicoli's sitting there like, hey, man, I need like some definition. I don't know what you want me to do. And
Yeah.
so it's helped me realize before scaling to more people, just trying to get the agents to do what I need them to do, I'm missing a ton of structure that I need in place to scale successfully.
So I think you've hit it. It's the threshold, and I want the entrepreneurs out there, the startup guys out there, to take this with the grain of salt. When it's a team of three, when it's a team of seven, yes, you need people who, right? Because you can't predict everything. You don't know what's coming. You haven't yet built out the systems for scale and consistency because you're still adjusting. You might even still be innovating. You might be moving from like, hey, we're going to do a pure SaaS product to, hey, we're going to use SaaS internally to develop a service. Like, so your team's got to be able to, be nimble and flex like that. But once you hit that moment where you're like, we now have our product and our market defined, and now it's time to scale, that's when the leaders need to start to go, consistency is the key to scale. Throwing this concept out that everyone's going to just keep figuring it out. We'll throw bodies in the organization and they'll figure out what they need to do. That's kind of a big leadership failure. Often, once you get to a certain size of an organization, when people are not succeeding, man, I can tell you how many times it's the leader failed to define what was needed. People want to succeed, people want to do their job well. If we don't define what that is, what their job is, and what success looks like on the job, how can we blame them? Right? So it's up to us as leaders who are growing a company when we hit the scale, when we're ready to scale, that we have to take the moment and truly ask, what's the right structure? What are the roles needed? What do I need that role to perform? And then who's right for that seat? Who can do that seat well? You can't look around and just keep asking people to flex and move. It just doesn't work at a certain point. Early stage, you need it. And this is, I think the struggle that some entrepreneurs, when it's time to be that CEO, this is where they kind of hit that wall. Some of them naturally kind of get it, and they're like, oh, I only dealt with that chaos to get the business started, and now I want structure, and I'm comfortable being CEO. Other entrepreneurs, man, they just, no. Okay, great. Find a leader who can run your company and go innovate again. Go
Yeah.
do some other big idea. Great. That's who you are, right? Recognize that in yourself too.
Yeah, and I think the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Bill Gates of the world the and the Michael Dells of the world are just the big anomalies that are able to make that transition.
But they also think about their first lieutenant or their second in command, what we would call an integrator.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily give credit, right, to the Wozniaks and the Balmers and the I think Sandbergs, right? We don't give credit to those people who are taking that idea, that innovation, and actually then making it, bringing it to market and executing and driving the business forward. So it looks like a Bill Gates or a Zuckerberg is one of these visionaries, right? That can run a successful company, and we're not organized. As a matter of fact, I saw an interview with Bezos, and Bezos made it real clear that if he didn't have the people on his team to kind of ask the question, great idea, how are we going to do it? He wouldn't have succeeded. He didn't know how to do it. He had the idea. Right?
Yeah.
I want to be able to deliver everything for free overnight.
Yeah.
He
No.
didn't figure out how to do it. He had people who figured out how to do that.
Well, tell you what, let's wrap up with this. How do you help people build these systems and put this in place?
Oh, well, that's a that's a 4-hour dissertation or a 3-minute elevator. So ultimately, what I do as an implementer, Craig, is I bring a complete system of simple tools, right? They're proven practical tools that helps my clients achieve three things we call vision, traction, healthy. Okay,
Mm,
vision from the standpoint of I first work with an owner and a leadership team to get them 100% on the same page with where they're going and how they plan to get there. Traction means help create real discipline and accountability so that everywhere you look, your vision is being executed really well. And then healthy means I work with leadership teams to create a healthy, functional, cohesive leadership team because sometimes even great leaders don't do well as a team. So when I help a company implement EOS, that simple, complete system of practical tools, I add the kind of structure accountability, clarity of vision, traction components, the day in, day out things, the inglorious things, but absolutely necessary for scale. Uh, Really, that helps them break through those ceilings and take it to the next level.
Wow. Well, I'm in a mastermind with an integrator,
Hmm.
and he's helped me tremendously. And I'm not even a client, just getting like the first shavings of the ice from the questions. It's been absolutely transformative for my business. I can't imagine what it would mean to have somebody like you full time. How can folks reach you?
Oh, yeah, I'm happy to share my email. They can call me, they can email me. I just love conversations with anybody. If there's a question you have or a problem you want to work through, happy to talk anytime. I'll share my website with you
Yep,
that you can
throw it
share
out there.
out with your friends.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
um, and you're on LinkedIn.
absolutely.
Okay, so Gary Leeman on LinkedIn, and then what's your website? Is it the EOS website, or do you have?
Yeah, it's my microsite on EOS. It's oh gosh, Gary. Well, I didn't memorize the URL, but I'm sure you share it. But yes, it's the EOS website.
We'll have it in the show notes.
Okay.
Gary, thanks for coming on Layers and Legacies.
Man, thanks for having me. It's always great talking to you. Love the conversation, Craig. Thank you.